Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and here's the first card I've made with the Simon Says Stamp August 2016 card kit. I just filmed and posted the unboxing video of this, and right after that I immediately sat down to make a card. And the first thing I thought of when looking at the stamp set was a galaxy background. So I've done a video on my first attempt with a galaxy background using watercolors, and I said I wanted to try using other supplies. And this is going to be a bit of an experiment on my part. I decided to use the smooth white cardstock that comes in the kit. This is the Simon Says Stamp 120 pound cardstock. So this is not watercolor paper, so it's not really meant for this sort of a thing. But I wanted to give it a go just to see what I could do. And I also limited myself in the colors. In the kit, there are two distress inks that it comes with, which is Festive Berries and Chip Sapphire. So I mushed those both onto my craft sheet, and then in the middle section there, I mushed both colors together so I could mix them and create a purple, just to give me a little more options, and just decided to apply it to the cardstock and see what would happen. So I taped the cardstock down with painter's tape onto my craft sheet here, and I knew the color, the ink in the water wouldn't work the same as watercolor paper. It's kind of hard to explain, but with just regular cardstock, the ink basically just soaks into the cardstock. You can't really move it around. You don't have that give like you do with watercolor cardstock. But it was fun to experiment. So I just kind of applied the colors. I tried not to get it too wet because it's, like I said, it's not watercolor cardstock. So it doesn't have the same fibers. It's not meant to hold a lot of water. So it can pill up. It can warp really badly. I didn't work it too heavily, so it didn't pill at all for me, and because it was like I said, it's a Simon Says Stamp 120 pounds, so it's pretty heavy weight. So it did work. At first I was like, this looks awful. It just looks awful. But I did grab some black soot distress ink, started adding that. It still looked pretty awful, I'm not gonna lie. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm not gonna just abandon this. Let's just get right to the end and see if I can make this just work. So I took some Copic opaque white, and you can use just white acrylic paint. That'll work too. I love my Copic opaque white. Like, it is white. And I flicked that on with the paintbrush as well. And then I grabbed my little toothbrush, which I've shown before. It's just a clean old toothbrush, and splattered that on. And that really helped as well to create more of like the galaxy look. So it is possible with limited supplies to, you know, experiment and have a little bit of success. So I totally encourage people. You don't need to have like everything under the sun like I do. So, and it's just fun sometimes to play around. So like I said, this did warp a fair bit because of like just the amount of saturation and water I used. So what I ended up doing was, after I peeled the tape off, I took the Simon Says Stamp, this is the basic rectangles die set, which I've been using on like everything lately, and decided which die I wanted to use. And I ended up using the third largest die, I think is what I used. And I ran this through my die cut machine, so that helped a lot. But the pressure, even if you weren't going to die cut, if you run it through your die cut machine a couple times, just the pressure of the die cut machine will, you know, help to flatten it out. So I did that, and I made sure everything was dry, by the way. And then I treated it with my anti-static powder tool first and poured the embossing powder over it just to make sure that it wasn't going to cling to, you know, the paint splatters or anything like that. And then I'm inking up images from this Seeing Stars stamp set that comes in the set with Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink, and then coating them with the some detail white embossing powder. So I started with the star shape constellation type images, and then there's a bunch of little solid stars in the set as well. So I picked the 3 smallest ones and stamped those as well, just to kind of complete this whole galaxy background. So the stamps help distract from the background a little bit. It did work, but I do recommend using, you know, some watercolor cardstock. But hey, use what you've got. It's kind of fun sometimes. You never know what you're going to end up with. So I stamped everything, and then I heated it with my heat tool, which just kind of warped it a little bit again. But when I adhere this to my actual card base, I'm going to use a generous amount of foam tape. But before I get to that, there in the kit is some soft navy cardstock from Simon Says. And I lined up 2 of the sentiments, and I just used my grid paper here to line these sentiments up so I could stamp them all on one line. And then I treated the cardstock again with my anti-static powder tool, and this just keeps the embossing powder from clinging to anything but the stamped area. So then I stamped the sentiment with the same clear embossing ink, And then I'm going to coat that again with my detail white embossing powder. And I always use a coffee filter for this. I haven't mentioned that in a while. But I use a coffee filter to catch all that excess powder, and that way I can funnel it back into the container without causing a great big huge mess. So coated that, tapped off the excess, heated it with my heat tool until it was all melted. And then, yes, funneled the embossing powder back into the container. I always need to make a point of doing that because more often than not, I knock over the container or the coffee filter and end up with embossing powder absolutely everywhere. So I rubbed off the anti-static powder over the embossed sentiment there with just using my fingers. And then I lined this up on my paper trimmer, and I was just using the wire in the middle of it to see where I was cutting so I could trim that down into one strip, and then figured out how much on each end I wanted left over. And then I just grabbed my scissors to cut little flag ends, and you just cut a notch in the center, and then you meet that from each corner to the end of the cut mark, if that makes sense. I kind of show it there in the video. But yeah, I always just eyeball it, cut that little notch in the center, and then meet each end and snip it off, and then I've got a perfect little flag end on one or each end of my cardstock, depending on what I'm doing. And then I took the other half of that heavyweight white cardstock that comes in the kit and scored it at 5.5 inches, so that'll create a top folding A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I just used my Teflon bone folder for that. And then, like I said, I coated pretty much the entire back of that little watercolor panel there with foam tape so that it's adhered flat, and it helps kind of flatten it out a bit. And then decided to pop the sentiment up with a little bit of foam tape as well, just to give it that extra dimension, since I decided to keep this card fairly simple since, you know, I was doing the galaxy background and the splatters and the embossing and all that. So I adhered that into place. And then to finish off the inside of the card, I grabbed another sentiment from this Seeing Stars set. I absolutely love this set. I think I mentioned that in the unboxing video. This is such a great set. So I stamped the words "I miss you" with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And then I took those solid stars again and stamped on the inside, but I just made sure to stamp them off once, and I'm just using those same two distress inks, the Chip Sapphire and the Festive Berries that come in the kit. And just stamp them off once each, just to kind of soften the color a little bit. And yeah, that's all there was to it. So as always, I will have links below the video. I'll have a link to my blog post, which will have the pictures as well as picture links and all that sort of stuff. And links to all the supplies, all that info will be in the description box below the video. So if you're interested in that, check that out below. And thank you all so much for subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I read all the comments, I respond to as many as I possibly can, and I really appreciate the support and you guys taking time out of your day to watch my videos. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.